The Soul and God, Part 2. Later on, when man developed his inner self, he began to question and to say that God is good. The Persians said that there are two gods. One was bad and one was good. Their idea was that everything in this life was good. Beautiful country where there was spring almost the whole year round and nobody died, there was no disease, everything was fine. Then came this wicked one, and he touched the land, and then came death and disease, and mosquitoes, and tigers, and lions. Then the Aryans left their fatherland and migrated southwards. The old Aryans must have lived way to the north. The Jews learnt it, the idea of the devil, from the Persians. The Persians also taught that there will come a day when this wicked god will be killed, and it is our duty to stay with the good God and add our force to him in this eternal struggle between him and the wicked one. The whole world will be burnt out, and everyone will get a new body. The Persian idea was that even the wicked will be purified and not be bad anymore. The nature of the Aryan was love and poetry. They cannot think of their being burnt for eternity. They will all receive new bodies, then no more death. So that this is the best about religious ideas outside of India. Along with that is the ethical strain. All that man has to do is to take care of three things: good thought, good word, good deed. That is all. It is a practical, wise religion. Already there has come a little poetry in it, but there is higher poetry and higher thought. In India, we see this Satan in the most ancient part of the Vedas. He just appears and immediately disappears. In the Vedas, the bad god got a blow and disappeared. He is gone and the Persians took him. We are trying to make him leave the world altogether. Taking the Persian idea, we are going to make a decent gentleman of him, giving him a new body. There was the end of the Satan idea in India. But the idea of God went on. But mind you, here comes another fact. The idea of God grew side by side with the idea of materialism until you have traced it up to the emperor of Persia. But on the other hand comes in metaphysics, philosophy. There is another line of thought, the idea of the non-dual Atma, man's own soul, that also grows. So outside of India, ideas about God has to remain in that concrete form until India came to help them out a little bit. The other nations stopped with that old concrete idea. In this country, America, there are millions who believe that God has a body. Whole sections say it. They believe that he rules the world, but there is a place where he has a body. He sits upon a throne. They light candles and sing songs just as they do in our temples. But in India, they are sensible enough never to make their god a physical being. You never see in India a temple of Brahma. Why? Because the idea of the soul always existed. The Hebrew race never questioned about the soul. There is no soul idea in the Old Testament at first. The first is in the New Testament. The Persians, they became so practical, wonderfully practical people, a fighting, conquering race. They were the English people of the old times, always fighting and destroying their neighbors, too much engaged in that sort of thing to think about the soul. The oldest idea of the soul was that of a fine body inside this gross one. The gross one disappears and the fine one appears. In Egypt, that fine one also dies, and as soon as the gross body disintegrates, the fine one also disintegrates. That is why they built those pyramids and embalmed the dead bodies of their ancestors, thus hoping to secure immortality for the departed. The Indian people have no regard for the dead body at all. Their attitude is, let us take it and burn it. The son has to set fire to his father's body. There are two sorts of races, the divine and the demonic. The divine think that they are soul and spirit, the demonic think that they are bodies. The old Indian philosophers tried to insist that the body is nothing. As a man emits his old garments and takes a new one, even so the old body is shed and he takes a new one. In my case, all my surrounding and education were trying to make me the other way. I was always associated with Mohammedans and Christians who take more care of the body. It is only one step from the body to the spirit. In India, they became insistent on this ideal of the soul. It became synonymous with the idea of God. It is the idea of the soul begins to expand. Man must arrive at the conclusion that it is beyond name and form. The Indian idea is that the soul is formless. Whatever is form must break some time or other. There cannot be any form unless it is the result of force and matter, and all combinations must dissolve. If such is the case, if your soul is made of name and form, it disintegrates and you die and you are no longer immortal. If it is a double, it has form and it belongs to nature and it obeys nature laws of birth and death. They find that this soul is not the mind, neither a double. Thoughts can be guided and controlled. The yogis of India practice to see how far the thoughts can be guided and controlled. By dint of hard work, thoughts may be silenced altogether. If thoughts were the real man, as soon as thought ceases, he ought to die. Thought ceases in meditation, even the mind's elements are quite quiet. Blood circulation stops, his breath stops, and he is not dead. If thought were he, the whole thing ought to go, and they find it does not go. That is practical proof. They came to the conclusion that even mind and thought were not the real man. Then speculation showed that it could not be. I come, I think, and talk. In the midst of all this activity is this unity of the self. My thought and my actions are varied, many folds, but in and through them runs that one unchangeable one. It cannot be the body that is changing every minute. It cannot be the mind, the new and the fresh thoughts come all the time. It is neither the body nor the mind. Both body and mind belong to nature and must obey nature's laws. A free mind never will. Now, therefore, this real man does not belong to nature. It is the person whose mind and body belong to nature. So much of nature we are using. Just as you come to use the pen and ink and chair, so he uses so much of nature in fine and gross form. Gross form, the body, the fine form, the mind. If it is simple, it must be formless. In nature alone are forms. That which is not of nature cannot have any forms, fine or gross. It must be formless. It must be omnipresent. Understand this. Take this glass on the table. The glass is form and the table is form. So much of the glassness goes off, so much of the tableness when they break. The soul is nameless because it is formless. It will neither go to heaven nor to hell any more than it will enter this glass. It takes the form of the vessel it fills. If it is not in space, either of two things is possible. Either the soul permeates space or space is in it. You are in space and must have a form. Space limits us, binds us, and makes a form of us. If you are not in space, space is in you. All the heavens and the world are in the person.